The sun was just rising over the silver towers of Earth Command when the order came through. The UES Nightborne rested in its dock, its long dark hull gleaming under the soft light. The crew had been going about their normal duties, unaware that their lives were about to change. Captain Daniel Cross stood in his ready room, a data tablet in his hand, his eyes fixed on the message from High Command. It was short and direct. The Varkari had attacked another human colony. The war had begun. Daniel walked out onto the bridge. The crew looked up at him, sensing the shift in the air. He had a calm but serious face, the kind that made people listen. "Without question, we have our orders," he said firmly. His voice carried across the room, silencing the quiet hum of consoles and the soft chatter between stations. "The Varkari have made their move. Our colony on Vega Prime was hit without warning. Civilians are dead and survivors are few. We're joining the fight." A murmur passed through the crew. Lieutenant Marcus Hale at the tactical station tightened. His jaw, Ensign Olivia Grant lowered her gaze for a moment, her hands still resting on the comms panel. Chief Engineer Ethan Cole stopped mid-sentence with one of his technicians, his usual easy grin gone. Commander Laura Brooks, the ship's executive officer, gave a sharp nod, her eyes steady on the captain. Daniel let the weight of his words sink in. He knew some of them had family out there, maybe even on Vega Prime. But there was no time for hesitation. "We launch within the hour. Prep all systems for combat readiness. Marcus, I want every weapon checked and calibrated. Olivia, send word to command confirming our departure. Ethan, make sure the engines are running at full capacity." The crew moved quickly, each person diving into their tasks. The usual calm of the bridge turned into focused motion. Daniel watched them for a moment before stepping aside to speak quietly with Laura. "This will be the first real fight for half this crew," he said. "Keep them sharp." Laura met his eyes. "They'll be ready, but you know how the Varkari fight. They don't negotiate." Daniel's mouth set into a hard line. "Then neither will we." Down in engineering, Ethan Cole ran his hands along the warm metal of the main reactor casing, listening to the steady hum. His team was already working, tightening bolts, running diagnostics, and swapping out components with practiced speed. The Nightborne had some of the most advanced engines in the fleet, and he intended to push them to their limits. In the crew quarters, younger officers and enlisted personnel packed their gear into lockers, securing personal items in case of damage. Some moved with steady hands, others with nervous energy. The news of the attack had spread quickly, and for some, this would be their first time leaving the safety of Earth's orbit. On the bridge, Olivia Grant tapped the comms screen opening. A secure channel to Earth Command. Her voice was clear and professional, but her heart pounded. "Command, this is UES Nightborne. Orders received. Preparing for immediate departure." She signed off and glanced at the captain, who gave her a brief nod of approval. Marcus Hale moved from console to console, checking the targeting arrays, ensuring the railguns and plasma batteries were fully charged. He spoke little, but his eyes were sharp. He had seen combat before, and he knew how quickly things could turn. The docking clamps released with a low rumble that vibrated through the ship. The massive vessel began to drift forward, pushed gently away from the station before its thrusters engaged. Outside, the blue curve of Earth began to fall away, replaced by the black expanse of space. Daniel stood in the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He took one last look at his homeworld before turning his gaze forward. "Set course for Vega Prime Sector," he ordered. "Course locked," Laura confirmed. "Engage." The Nightborne's engines flared, and the ship leaped forward into the darkness. Around them, the stars stretched into thin lines as the vessel entered. Faster than light travel? The crew settled into their stations, each movement precise, each word clipped and to the point. They all knew what lay ahead. Far out in the cold void, the Varkari were waiting. The enemy was known for their brutal tactics and their complete disregard for life. They attacked without warning, leaving nothing behind but debris and silence. The thought of what they had done to Vega Prime burned in the minds of the Nightborne's crew. Daniel Cross stood at the heart of it all, the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders. He thought of the men and women who would trust him with their lives in the coming days. He thought of the people who had already been lost. And he promised himself that when they found the Varkari, humanity's answer would be swift and final. The ship pressed on into the unknown, carrying with it the hopes of an entire world. The call to arms had been answered, and the UES Nightborne was on its way to war. The UES Nightborne moved steadily through the vast blackness of space. Stars drifted by like scattered diamonds, distant and silent. On the bridge, the crew worked quietly, each person focused on their station. Captain Daniel Cross sat in the command chair, his eyes fixed on the forward view. The hum of the ship's systems was the only constant sound. Commander Laura Brooks walked over, holding a small datapad. "We're 2 days from the Vega Prime sector at current speed," she said. "Scanners are clear for now. No sign of Varkari activity in our immediate path." Daniel nodded. "Let's keep it that way for as long as we can, but stay sharp." Below deck, in the crew mess conversations were low and cautious. Ensign Olivia Grant sat with a cup of coffee, staring at the swirling surface. Across from her, Chief Engineer Ethan Cole was explaining engine maintenance routines to a young crewman. He spoke in an easy tone, but his eyes betrayed a sense of alertness. "The thing about long runs like this," Ethan said, "is you can't slack off. A small problem now becomes a big problem later. And when we meet the Varkari, we'll need every system running at peak." Olivia gave a small smile. "Sounds like you've done this before." Ethan shrugged. "Once or twice. And it's never the way you expect it to be." On the bridge, Marcus Hale was running weapon diagnostics. He watched the targeting reticles adjust and recalibrate, making sure the railguns were perfectly aligned. Laura passed behind him and glanced at the display. "All weapons ready?" she asked. "Ready and waiting," Marcus replied without looking up. Hours passed quietly until Olivia's console lit up with a sharp tone. She straightened in her chair, fingers moving across the controls. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal. Faint, but definitely human in origin." Daniel leaned forward. "Location?" "Sector 429, about 2 hours off our course," Olivia said. She paused, frowning. "It's coming from a registered mining station. The signal's automated, but there's some irregularity to it. Could be a distress beacon." Marcus looked up from his console. "Or it could be bait." Daniel considered. For a moment, the Varkari were known for using false signals to lure ships into traps. But if there were survivors out there, leaving them wasn't an option. He turned to Laura. "Prepare to change course. We'll investigate." Laura nodded and gave the order. The Nightborne shifted its heading, the stars outside moving slowly as the ship angled toward the new destination. As they approached, the mining station came into view. It was a small, blocky structure anchored to a large asteroid, its surface scarred and pitted. Parts of it were dark, with no lights or heat signatures. Only a faint glow came from one corner of the structure. "Scanning for life signs," Marcus reported. He frowned as he studied the readout. "I'm getting a handful of human biosigns. But there's also something else faint. Not human." Daniel's voice was steady. "Arm the boarding team. Laura, you're leading it. Marcus, you're with her. Take a small team and get those people out." In the armory, Laura checked her rifle and secured her helmet. Marcus loaded fresh power cells into his sidearm. The boarding team gathered in the airlock, their armor sealed and their weapons ready. Ethan's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Shuttle bay is ready. Good luck out there." The shuttle detached from the Nightborne and drifted toward the station. Inside, Laura kept her eyes on the docking clamps as they extended. The shuttle clanged softly against the airlock, and a hiss of air marked the connection. The corridor beyond was dim and cold. Panels hung loose from the walls, and debris floated in the weak artificial gravity. Laura raised her weapon and motioned for the team to move forward. The sound of their boots echoed in the empty halls. They found the first survivor in a storage room, huddled behind a crate. His face was pale and his eyes wide. "They came out of nowhere," he whispered. "They're still here." Marcus's grip tightened on his weapon. "Move him to the shuttle. Now." As two crew members escorted the man away, the rest of the team pressed deeper into the station. A faint scraping sound echoed from a side corridor. Laura turned her head, eyes narrowing. From the shadows, tall figures emerged, their armor black and glistening under the flickering lights. The Varkari. The first shot rang out, bright energy cutting through the air. The boarding team returned fire, the narrow corridor flashing with light and noise. The aliens moved quickly, their long limbs carrying them forward with frightening speed. Laura shouted orders, keeping the team coordinated. One alien fell, its body crashing to the floor. Another leaped to the side, firing back, with a weapon that hissed and sparked. They pushed forward, step by step, until they reached a control room. There, huddled together, were more survivors miners who had managed to seal themselves in. Laura motioned for them to follow. The team formed a protective line, moving back. Through the corridors, the aliens pursued, their strange, guttural voices echoing through the halls. Marcus covered the rear, firing in controlled bursts to slow them down. The survivors were rushed into the shuttle, and the team followed close behind. The shuttle disengaged from the station and sped toward the Nightborne. On the bridge, Daniel watched the feed from the shuttle's cameras. He saw the station grow, smaller in the distance. Its outer hull marked by scorch marks and impact craters. When the survivors were brought aboard, Daniel met them in the hangar. They were shaken, but alive. One of the miners stepped forward. "Captain, they're gathering a fleet nearby. I saw it on the long-range scans before they hit us. There were dozens of ships." Daniel's expression hardened. The war had just become even more dangerous, and the Nightborne was heading straight toward it. The UES Nightborne held position in the shadow of a large asteroid, its engines idling at minimal output. The survivors from the mining station had been given food, water, and medical care, but their words weighed heavily on everyone aboard. The news of a large Varkari fleet nearby had put the entire crew on edge. Captain Daniel Cross stood in the briefing room with Commander Laura Brooks, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, Ensign Olivia Grant, and Chief Engineer Ethan Cole. A holographic map floated above the table, showing the location of the mining station, the Nightborne's position, and the probable location of the Varkari fleet. "They'll be moving soon," Daniel said, his voice calm but sharp. "If we can track their movements before they assemble, we might have a chance to strike first. But to do that, we need more information." Laura crossed her arms. "That means sending another team in. The mining station was bad enough. The Varkari aren't going to leave anything unguarded." Marcus leaned forward. "We can handle it. There's an outpost or a forward scout. We take it out and grab whatever data we can. Quick and clean." Daniel looked at Olivia. "What about comms? Any chance we can pick up their transmissions?" Olivia shook her head. "They're using tight beam communication. Unless we're right in their path, we'll never hear them." Ethan spoke up. "The engines can handle a short burst to close the gap, but we'll be risking detection if we get too close." Daniel gave a small nod. "Risk is unavoidable. We'll go in slow." "Laura, Prepare a boarding team. Marcus, you're with her again. Get me something we can use." Hours later, the Nightborne drifted toward the edge of a debris field where scans showed faint energy readings. As they approached, the shape of a small Varkari Ford station came into view. It was dark and jagged, built into the side of a fractured asteroid. Its design was alien sharp angles, strange glowing panels, and docking ports that looked more like organic growths than metal. The boarding team suited up again. The survivors from the mining station had confirmed that these outposts often contained navigational data and fleet movement schedules. If they could get that, they would know exactly where the Varkari were headed. The shuttle detached from the Nightborne and glided toward the alien structure. Inside, Laura kept her eyes on the entry hatch while Marcus scanned for threats. The docking procedure was slow and silent. When the hatch finally opened, the air inside was cold and stale. They stepped into a dim corridor lined with strange markings. The walls pulsed faintly with light, as if the station itself was alive. There was no sound but the faint hum of their own suits. Marcus moved ahead, checking corners with his rifle. "Clear," he said quietly. The team advanced deeper until they reached what appeared to be a control chamber. Alien consoles glowed with unreadable symbols. In the center of the room was a large device projecting a rotating hologram of multiple star systems. "Looks like fleet routes," Laura said. She motioned to the tech specialist on the team. "Get everything you can." The specialist connected a portable data unit to the alien console. The download began, but the progress was slow. Then, from somewhere down the corridor, came the sound of movement. Laura raised her hand in a silent signal. The team spread out, weapons ready. Marcus took position by the doorway, peering into the darkness beyond. Figures emerge, tall, armored, and moving with inhuman grace. The Varkari had arrived. The first shots flashed bright in the dim chamber. The alien return fire struck the walls, sending sparks across the floor. Marcus fired in controlled bursts, dropping one of the attackers, but more followed. Data's at 70%. The tech specialist shouted. Laura ordered the team to hold their ground. The firefight filled the room with noise and light. One alien lunged forward, forcing Marcus to slam it back with the butt of his rifle. Laura's shots were precise, each one finding a target. The specialist called out again. "Done. I've got it. Fall back." Laura ordered. The team retreated in a tight formation, covering each other as they moved. The Varkari pursued, their strange weapons hissing with every shot. The corridor twisted and turned, making the fight close and dangerous. They reached the shuttle and piled inside. Marcus was the last to enter, firing a final burst before hitting the controls too. "Seal the hatch. Go." Laura shouted. The shuttle engines roared, pulling them away from the alien station. On the Nightborne, Daniel watched as the feed showed the shuttle racing back. Behind it, the alien station began to light up likely, sending an alert to the fleet. When the shuttle docked, the team wasted no time. The data unit was rushed to Olivia, who immediately began decoding the alien information. After several tense minutes, she looked up at Daniel. "I've got it," she said. "The fleet is gathering near the Tarsi's rift. If we move now, we can intercept them before they regroup." Daniel stared at the map on the screen. This was their chance. A single strike could cripple the enemy before they became an unstoppable force. "Set course for the Tarsi's rift," he ordered. The crew moved. Quickly, the Nightborne turned toward its next destination, engines burning bright against the dark. Somewhere ahead, the Varkari fleet was waiting, but this time, humanity would not be caught by surprise. The UES Nightborne sped through the dark stretch of space toward the Tarsi's rift. On the bridge, the crew worked with quiet focus, the weight of the alien data heavy on everyone's mind. The Varkari fleet was larger than they had expected, and its position meant that the next battle could decide the fate of many human colonies. Captain Daniel Cross stood in front of the main display, watching the star map update with their progress. The glowing markers representing the enemy fleet pulsed in red, slowly shifting as the alien ships repositioned. The data from the forward station had given them a rare chance to strike first. Commander Laura Brooks stepped beside him. "We'll reach the rift in 18 hours. If the data is right, the Varkari are still gathering. We might be able to hit them before they're ready." Daniel nodded, but kept his eyes on the display. "That's the plan. But we need to be smart. One wrong move, and we'll be outnumbered and surrounded." At the tactical station, Lieutenant Marcus Hale studied the incoming scans. "We're picking up faint energy trails ahead. Could be advanced scouts." "How many?" Daniel asked. "2, maybe 3 ships. Smaller than destroyers, but fast," Marcus replied. Laura turned to Daniel. "If they spot us, they'll warn the fleet." Daniel thought for a moment. "Then they can't spot us." "Marcus, plot a course around them. Use the rift's gravity eddies to mask our trail." Meanwhile, in engineering, Chief Ethan Cole was checking the reactor levels with his team. The Nightborne's engines would need to run at maximum output for the ambush to work. Every bolt, seal, and coolant line had to be perfect. He moved from station to station, tightening clamps and double-checking readings. Back on the bridge, Ensign Olivia Grant was monitoring communications. The Varkari signals were difficult to intercept, but occasional bursts of encrypted data slipped through. She listened to the faint, alien static and wondered what orders were being passed among their ships. Hours passed, and the crew settled into their battle preparations. Weapons crews loaded the railguns, checking every shell. Plasma batteries were charged to full, and shield generators were tested for rapid deployment. In the briefing room, Daniel gathered his senior officers. The holographic display showed the rift's jagged shape, a massive tear in space surrounded by dense asteroid fields. The enemy fleet icons clustered near its center. "We'll use the asteroids as cover," Daniel began. "Our job is to hit them hard before they can organize. The data we recovered suggests their command ships will be positioned here and here." He pointed to 2 large markers on the map. Laura studied the display. "If we take out their command structure, the rest of the fleet will be disorganized. But we'll have to get close for that." Marcus leaned forward. "We can use a staggered strike pattern. First volley from long range to weaken their forward ships, then close in and finish." "The command vessels," Ethan added, "that'll put a lot of strain on the engines, but we can manage if we don't push them too long at full burn." Daniel looked at each of them in turn. "We have one shot. We take it, or the Varkari bring this war to Earth's doorstep." No one spoke for a moment, the weight of his words filling the room. Finally, Laura gave a firm nod. "We'll be ready." The rest of the day was spent in preparation. In the hangar, shuttle crews armed their small craft with torpedoes for close-range strikes. Security teams checked boarding gear in case they needed to capture an enemy vessel. In the medical bay, supplies were stocked, and the medics prepared for the wounded they knew would be coming. As the hours passed, the Nightborne entered the outer edges of the rift. The view outside the forward window became a swirl of massive rock formations, some spinning slowly, others colliding in the distance. The gravitational pull from the rift distorted sensor readings, making navigation tricky. Olivia's voice broke the tense silence. "Captain, we're picking up more faint energy readings ahead." "Multiple ships." Marcus checked his display. "Looks like an outer patrol." They're positioned to cover the approach. Daniel stood straight. "Then we go around them. Keep our profile low. The closer we can get without being seen, the better our first strike will be." The Nightborne Slipped between two massive asteroids, engines running at minimum to reduce their energy signature. Shadows from the tumbling rocks passed over the hull, hiding them from the distant patrol ships. When they finally emerged into a clearer stretch, the enemy fleet came into view. Even partially assembled, it was an intimidating sight. Dozens of Varkari warships, their dark hulls glowing faintly with alien light. Some were massive, larger than the Nightborne, while others darted between them like smaller predators. Laura let out a slow breath. There they are. Daniel studied the view. He could see the two command ships in the center of the formation, surrounded by a protective ring of escorts. The alien vessels moved with perfect coordination, each one sliding into position without hesitation. "We'll wait until they're focused inward," Daniel said. "When they're not looking outward for threats, we make our move." The crew returned to their stations, every person aware that the next time they looked up from their work, the battle would have begun. The Nightborne drifted silently in the shadows, a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike, in the quiet before the storm. Daniel thought of the civilians on the colonies, of the attack on Vega Prime, and of the miners they had saved. This was their chance to answer the Varkari's brutality with the full strength of humanity. And when the time came, there would be no warning. The UES Nightborne drifted silently in the shadow of a massive asteroid, the enemy fleet still unaware of its presence. On the bridge, every light was dimmed, and the crew spoke in low voices. Captain Daniel Cross stood at the center, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Varkari fleet was moving slowly, shifting formations as more ships arrived at the Tarsaz Rift. Lieutenant Marcus Hale studied the range indicators. They're beginning to settle into a defensive pattern. Once they're in place, it'll be harder to get through. Commander Laura Brooks stepped up beside the captain. "If we hit them now, we'll catch them mid-formation. They won't be able to respond as quickly." Daniel gave a slow nod. "That's the idea. Marcus, bring all railguns online and prepare plasma batteries for rapid fire. Olivia, keep scanning for any movement on our flank. If they have hidden scouts, I want to know before they see us." In engineering, Chief Ethan Cole's voice came over the comms. "Engines are ready for a short burn on your mark, Captain. Shields are charged, and power routing to weapons is standing by." Daniel took one last look at the display. The two Varkari command ships sat in the center of the formation, their dark hulls pulsing with alien light. Dozens of smaller escorts moved in slow, precise arcs around them. They looked calm, unaware that a human warship was lurking in the shadows. "Bring us out of cover," Daniel ordered quietly. The Nightborne's thrusters engaged with barely a sound. The asteroid shadow slipped away, revealing the ship's long black frame to the distant stars. Still far enough to avoid immediate detection, they crept closer. Using the drifting rocks as partial cover. Range 100,000 kilometers, Marcus reported. "Prepare to fire," Daniel said. The crew moved with practiced precision. On the tactical screens, firing solutions locked onto the nearest escorts and the outer hull of the first command ship. Ammunition indicators flashed green as the railguns reached full charge. Daniel waited until the enemy escorts drifted slightly out of alignment. Then his voice cut through the tension. "Fire!" The Nightborne's railguns roared, sending hypervelocity slugs tearing across the void. A heartbeat later, the first Varkari escorts exploded into shards of metal and flame. The plasma batteries followed, unleashing streams of searing energy that ripped through another cluster of ships. Multiple hits confirmed. Marcus shouted, the alien formation erupted into chaos. Varkari ships twisted in every direction, trying to find the source of the sudden attack. Their comms lit up with encrypted signals, their weapons spinning into firing position. "Ethan, engines too full. We move in," Daniel ordered. The Nightborne surged forward, weaving between asteroids while continuing its assault. More enemy ships fell under the rapid, precise fire. The railguns punched through armor with brutal force, while the plasma batteries burned through anything that tried to close the distance. They're trying to regroup. Laura called out. "Don't give them the chance," Daniel replied. "Focus on the command ships. If we break their coordination, the rest will scatter." The first command ship loomed ahead, its angular hull shimmering with alien shields. Marcus fired a full salvo of railgun rounds into its side, followed by a concentrated plasma strike. The shields flared bright, then collapsed under the pressure. "Shields are down," Marcus announced. "Hit them again," Daniel ordered. The Nightborne's weapons tore into the exposed hull, sending debris spinning into space. Internal explosions lit the ship from within, and moments later it broke apart in a blinding burst. "One down," Laura said sharply. The destruction sent ripples of disorder through the Varkari fleet. Some ships moved to protect the remaining command vessel, while others broke formation entirely. "They're calling for reinforcements," Olivia reported, scanning the comms traffic. "If more arrive, we'll be outnumbered 2-1. Daniel's gaze stayed locked on the second command ship. "Then we finish this before they get here." The Nightborne cut through the enemy's outer line, its guns blazing. Enemy fire raked across the shields, making the deck tremble, but the crew held steady. Marcus timed the next volley perfectly, striking the second-in-command ship just as it turned broadside. A chain of explosions ripped across its surface, tearing open massive sections of its hull. The ship's engines flared wildly, then went dark. Moments later, the vessel split in two and drifted apart. "Their formations collapsing," Laura said. "Some are retreating into the rift. Others are scattering." "Keep firing," Daniel commanded. "We'll push them as far as we can." The Nightborne continued its relentless barrage, driving the remaining Varkari ships into full retreat. The asteroid field lit up with bursts of light as enemy vessels burned and broke apart. After several more volleys, Daniel finally gave the order. "Cease fire. Hold position." The bridge fell into a tense quiet, broken only by the sound of cooling systems and the faint hiss of the ventilation. The wreckage of dozens of enemy ships floated in the rift's dark currents. No more weapons fire came from the remaining Varkari. Ethan's voice came over the comms again. "Engines are cooling, Captain. We've got minor shield damage, but nothing critical." Daniel took a slow breath, scanning the field of destruction outside. They had struck first, and they had struck hard. The Varkari had been caught completely off guard, but he knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the rift, reinforcements would be coming, and the Nightborne would need to be ready when they arrived. Asterisk. The battle at the Tarsi's rift had ended, but the air on the bridge of the UES Nightborne was still tense. Wreckage drifted all around them, glowing faintly from the heat of destruction. The enemy was gone, either destroyed or fleeing into the rift, but the crew knew that the fight was far from over. Captain Daniel Cross stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. "Status report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Marcus Hale looked over his console. "Shields are down to 70%. Hull integrity is solid. Weapons are reloading and cooling. No major system damage." Commander Laura Brooks added, "We have minor injuries in engineering from a power surge, but nothing critical. The crew is ready for further action." Daniel nodded. "Good. Let's make the most of this time." Olivia scanned the rift. "See if you can track the fleeing ships." Olivia's fingers moved quickly over her station, picking up faint energy trails. "They're moving deep into the rift, possibly to regroup or link up with reinforcements." Laura frowned. "If they're regrouping, they'll come back stronger. We can't let them control this area." Daniel turned to engineering. "Ethan, how long until the engines are ready for another full burn?" Ethan's voice came over the comms. 20 minutes, Captain. I'll have them running like new. The bridge settled into a steady rhythm as the crew worked. Damaged panels were repaired, ammunition was moved into position, and sensor arrays swept the surrounding space. Outside, the remains of the Varkari fleet floated silently, a grim reminder of the power the Nightborne could unleash. Captain, Olivia said, after several minutes, I'm detecting something strange in the rift. It's not like their usual energy signature. It's bigger, much bigger. Daniel walked to her station. Show me. On the display, a massive energy reading pulsed within the rift's swirling currents. It was too large to be a standard warship. Laura's eyes narrowed. Could it be a carrier? Or something worse? Marcus studied the readings, moving slowly but steadily toward us. If it's a ship, it's the biggest one they've sent yet. Daniel felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. We don't know what it is. It could be their flagship. Laura glanced at him. If it's a flagship, destroying it now could cripple their entire operation here. Ethan's voice came back over the comms. Engines are ready, Captain. We can move whenever you give the order. Daniel took a deep breath, set a course into the rift. Keep us at full sensor sweep. If we can find it before it finds us, we'll have the advantage. The Nightborne slid forward, its engines cutting through the darkness. The rift's swirling clouds surrounded them, making navigation more dangerous. Static hissed across the comms, and the lights dimmed slightly as the ship adjusted to the strange environment. Olivia kept her eyes on the sensors. We're closing in on the source. The readings are stabilizing. It's definitely a ship, Captain. The first shadow appeared ahead, a massive dark shape half hidden in the rifts. Haze. As the Nightborne drew closer, more details came into view. An's enormous Varkari vessel, easily twice the size of their command ships. Its hull was covered in glowing lines, and its engines pulsed with an eerie light. Marcus stared at the display. That's not just a flagship. That's a war fortress. Laura's jaw tightened. If that thing makes it out of the rift, it could take on an entire fleet by itself. Daniel's voice was calm, but firm. Then it doesn't make it out of the rift. Marcus began locking weapons onto key points along the fortress's hull. They haven't spotted us yet. If we hit their engines first, they won't be able to maneuver. Do it, Daniel ordered. The Nightborne's railguns fired in perfect unison. The slugs streaked across the void and slammed into the fortress's rear engines. Explosions flared, but the massive ship barely slowed. Its shields rippled and held. Their powering weapons, Olivia warned. Bright beams of energy shot from the fortress, forcing the Nightborne to weave through the rift's debris to avoid being hit. The deck shuddered as a near miss rocked the shields. Return fire. Daniel commanded. The Nightborne's plasma batteries roared, striking at the fortress's shield generators. The two ships exchanged devastating volleys, lighting up the rift like a storm. The fortress's armor proved thick, but with each strike, the Nightborne carved deeper into its defenses. They're trying to turn toward us. Marcus called, "Stay on their flank." Laura ordered. Neil kept his focus on the target. Aim for their reactor housing. If we breach it, the ship will go up. Marcus adjusted his aim and fired a concentrated salvo. The shots hit home, and a massive explosion tore through the fortress's midsection. Flames and debris erupted from the wound, but still, the massive ship fought back. "They're not giving up," Olivia said. Daniel's tone was steel. "Neither are we." The Nightborne pressed the attack, striking again and again until the fortress's shields collapsed completely. With a final railgun volley, the human warship ripped through the reactor core. The explosion that followed lit the rift with blinding light, and the fortress was gone. Silence filled the bridge. Marcus exhaled slowly. Target destroyed. Daniel looked out at the drifting wreckage. Good work, everyone. Up this will only make them angrier. They'll be back, and next time they won't underestimate us. The Nightborne turned back toward open space. Its crew, knowing the war was far from over. The wreckage of the Varkari war fortress still burned in the rift. When the UES Nightborne emerged into open space, the crew was quiet, each person knowing. They had just survived one of the hardest fights of their lives, but none of them believed it was over. The silence after the battle felt heavy, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Captain Daniel Cross stood at the viewport, watching the drifting debris fade into the distance. "We dealt them a heavy blow," he said, his voice low. "But this will draw more of them here." Commander Laura Brooks stepped up beside him, "And they'll come faster than we think. The Varkari won't accept a loss like that without striking back." Daniel nodded. "We need to regroup." Olivia, scan for any friendly ships in the sector. Olivia scanned the surrounding space. "I have a signal. Vanguard. They're damaged but holding position near the Astera belt. They're asking for help." Marcus Hale looked up from his console. "The Vanguard's a heavy cruiser. They're asking for help. It means they've been through something bad." Daniel straightened. "Set course for the Vanguard. Maximum speed." The engines flared to life, and the Nightborne cut across the dark void toward the signal. Minutes passed in tense silence. Everyone was on edge, scanning for signs of enemy pursuit. When they reached the Astera belt, they saw the Vanguard immediately. The once-proud warship floated among the asteroids, its hull scarred and smoking. Large sections of its armor were gone, exposing the inner decks to space. Small repair drones moved along its surface like ants, working desperately. Daniel opened a channel. "Vanguard, this is Nightborne. We're here to assist." A weak but steady voice answered. "Nightborne, good to hear your voice. We were ambushed by 2 Varkari destroyers. We managed to destroy one, but the other escaped. We lost half our crew." Laura's expression hardened. "They're hunting us in small packs now, trying to weaken us before the next big strike." Daniel asked, "What do you need most?" The Vanguard's captain replied, "Shield generators are offline. Engines are running at 30%. Without repairs, we can't make it back to Fleet Command." Daniel didn't hesitate. "We'll send our engineering teams over." Ethan led a group of engineers across in shuttles. They moved quickly, bringing portable shield emitters and replacement parts. The asteroids around them provided some cover, but they all knew the Varkari could appear at any moment. While the engineers worked, Daniel and Laura reviewed tactical data. The map showed enemy movements growing closer to their position. Olivia's voice broke the uneasy quiet. "Captain, I have movement. Multiple contacts, they just entered the belt." Marcus checked his readings. 4 Varkari ships, 2 destroyers, 2 frigates. They're sweeping the asteroids. They'll find us soon. Daniel's voice was calm, but the crew could feel the tension rising. "Recall our teams. Prepare for combat." The engineers moved as fast as they could, sealing damaged sections and stabilizing the Vanguard systems. As the enemy closed in, the last shuttle returned to the Nightborne. Laura turned to Daniel. "We can't outrun them, not with the Vanguard in this condition." Daniel thought for a moment. "Then we don't run. We fight here, using the belt to our advantage." Marcus grinned. "Ambush in an asteroid field. I like it." They moved into position, hiding behind large chunks of rock and debris. The Nightborne and the damaged Vanguard powered down non-essential systems to appear as drifting wreckage. Moments later, the Varkari ships came into view. They moved slowly, scanning each asteroid, unaware of the trap. "Wait for my signal," Daniel said quietly. The Enemy destroyers passed dangerously close, their glowing engines reflecting off the surrounding rocks. The frigates followed, sweeping their sensors. Daniel gave a sharp nod. Now, the Nightborne's weapons lit up the darkness. Railgun slugs and plasma blasts ripped into the nearest destroyer, tearing its shields apart in seconds. The Vanguard, still damaged but armed, joined in. Targeting a frigate, the Valkyrie were caught off guard. But they responded quickly, firing back and trying to maneuver in the tight field. Asteroids shattered under the crossfire, sending debris spinning in. All directions, Marcus called out, "First destroyer is down." Olivia shouted, "Frigate shields failing." The battle raged in close quarters, the asteroids forcing both sides into risky moves. The Nightborne weaved through the field, using cover to strike and vanish. The Vanguard, despite its damage, managed to destroy the second frigate. The last destroyer tried to retreat, but Daniel ordered pursuit. "We can't let it escape. If it warns the others, this sector will be swarming with enemies." They chased the destroyer to the edge of the belt, firing relentlessly. A final railgun volley from the Nightborne struck its reactor, and the ship exploded in a brilliant flash. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of the engines. Daniel took a breath. "Status." Laura replied, "Vanguard is stable. Minimal. Damage on our side? No casualties." Daniel looked out into the stars. "Then we move fast. Every hour we wait is another hour the Valkyrie regroup." The two ships set a course for Fleet Command. Their crews, knowing the enemy, would not rest. And neither could they. The journey back to Fleet Command was quiet at first. But no one on the Nightborne trusted the silence. The battle in the asteroid belt had given them a small victory, yet every member of the crew knew the Valkyrie were far from defeated. They had hit the enemy hard, and that meant revenge would come soon. Captain Daniel Cross stood in the command. Center eyes on the star map. The Vanguard traveled alongside them, its repaired engines running smooth but still not at full power. Commander Laura Brooks reviewed the incoming reports. Fleet Command says the main enemy force is pushing toward the Vega Line. If they break through, they'll be on our colonies within days. Daniel nodded. "We can't let that happen." "What's our status?" Marcus Hale replied. "Shields at full strength. Weapons charged. Crew ready." Olivia, scanning the long-range sensors, frowned. "Contacts ahead. Multiple Valkyrie ships moving fast." "This isn't a scout group. It's a strike fleet." "How many?" Daniel asked. 8 ships, 4 destroyers, 3 frigates, and 1 dreadnought." The room went silent. Everyone knew what a Valkyrie dreadnought meant: massive firepower, heavy armor, and enough troops to overwhelm any boarding defense. Laura's voice was steady. "If they reach Vega Line, it's over. We have to stop them here." Daniel didn't hesitate. "Then we hold the line." The Vanguard's captain came through the comms. "We'll fight beside you, Nightborne, whatever it takes." Both ships adjusted course, heading straight for the enemy. The gap closed quickly. The Valkyrie fleet emerged into view, dark, spiked hulls glinting in the starlight, their engines burning bright blue. "Target the frigates first," Daniel ordered. "We need to thin them out before that dreadnought gets into range." The first volley tore across the void. The Nightborne's railguns smashed into a frigate's shields, breaking them in seconds. Plasma fire from the Vanguard finished the job, the enemy ship exploding into shards of glowing metal. The Valkyrie responded with a storm of energy blasts. The Nightborne shook as shields absorbed the impacts. Marcus called out, "Shields at 80%. The second frigate tried to flank them, but Olivia tracked it, firing torpedoes. She said, and moments later, the ship vanished in a burst of fire. But the dreadnought was closing. Its massive guns lit up, hurling beams of searing energy. The Vanguard took a direct hit, losing part of its starboard wing. Sparks rained inside its bridge, but it stayed in the fight. Laura studied the tactical display. We can't just trade shots. We need to get in close, where its big guns can't track us as well. Daniel agreed. Marcus, take us under its firing arc. Olivia, focus on the destroyers. If we isolate the dreadnought, we stand a chance. The Nightborne dived low, skimming close to the enemy formation. They weaved through incoming fire, the crew bracing as the ship shook under near misses. One destroyer turned to block their path. But a coordinated strike from both human ships tore it apart. 3 destroyers remained. The battle became a swirling melee, energy blasts and railgun rounds crossing the void. Asteroids from a nearby debris field drifted into the fight, adding chaos as ships dodged and collided. The Vanguard's captain shouted over comms, "We've opened a gap. Push through." The Nightborne surged forward, heading straight for the dreadnought's underside. Its heavy cannons couldn't angle down far enough, but smaller turrets opened fire. Sparks flew on the bridge as a console exploded, throwing one crewman to the floor. Laura's voice cut through the noise. Target, its reactor housing. Marcus fired the railguns at point-blank range. The dreadnought's shields flared and failed. Explosions ripped across its lower decks, and fire spewed from its engine vents. Still, the massive ship refused to die. It turned slowly, trying to bring its main guns to bear. Daniel made the call. Prepare the Nova Lance. The weapon was the Nightborne's most dangerous shot. A concentrated beam of energy that could cripple even the largest ship's butt. It drained nearly all weapon power in one blast. Charging. Ready? Marcus shouted. Daniel gave the order. Fire. The beam lanced out, slicing through the dreadnought's core. For a moment, it seemed the ship might hold together. Then, with a silent, blinding flash, it broke apart. Pieces scattering across the stars. The remaining Valkyrie ships tried to flee, but the Nightborne and Vanguard pursued, picking them off one by one. Within minutes, the battlefield was silent. Breathing heavily, Daniel looked around at his crew. Status. Laura smiled faintly. Minor damage. No critical systems down. Olivia added, Fleet Command reports the Vega line is secure. We stopped them. The Vanguard's captain sent a final message. We owe you our lives. Earth owes you its safety. Daniel looked out at the debris, knowing the war was far from over. Then let's make sure we're ready for the next fight. The 2 ships turned toward home. Their lights shining in the darkness signaled to friend and foe alike that humanity would not bow, and that the Nightborne's fight had only just begun. Asterisk.